Now, meringues. Who likes making meringues? Do you have problems making your meringues when you do them? I do sometimes. You know, when you kind of don't get them quite right, when they're a little bit overcooked, and what you want a nice chewy meringue, but you want it to be nice and crispy on the outside. Now, eggs are a very, very unstable ingredient, okay? So, what we've done, we've started this off for you. Now, there are various things you can do with meringues, and one of the first things you need to is make sure that the eggs are in the peak condition for making meringues. And the way you do that, which is quite a surprising thing, what I like to do is once I've separated off the eggs, and I separate the eggs by kind of dropping them through my hand, is let the whites sit, don't do anything to them, just let them sit at room temperature for at least 20 minutes, okay? You want to bring them up to room temperature and maybe even a little bit beyond. If you can let them sit for an hour, then do that. Because what happens is that the oxidation of the egg white means that when you start to whip them, they will become more voluminous and they'll become more glossy and they'll become more stable, which is what it's all about, okay? So that's your first bit. Once you've got your egg whites, before you whip them, let them sit there for an hour, okay? Go and have a drink, relax, just take your time. Then, we've whipped them now up to sort of a frothy stage, okay? And just do it kind of quite gently, just bring it up, you don't want to kind of overwork it, and then we add a little bit of sugar to it. So what we're getting is we're getting the start of the meringue, just starting to get ever so slight, that little bit glossiness. Then, the next thing that we do, however many egg whites you've got, once you've got them to this stage, so we've whipped them a little bit with a little bit of sugar, then add about a tablespoon of water. Thank you. Lovely. A tablespoon of water. So you've got 4 egg whites. What you're looking for is we want 4 tablespoons of water into here. Okay? So that's the first thing we're going to add. And again, this helps make them stable, it helps them kind of stay upright, it helps get nice and fluffy, and it helps with the volume. And the other thing that I always like to put, and I'm sure you do this as well, is just a little teaspoon, a little splash of vinegar. Do you do that in your meringues? Yeah. Brilliant, isn't it? It's the best thing in the world. So just a little bit of vinegar, and again, that acidity cuts through the egg white, and that's oil, isn't it, that one? You know, sometimes when you think maybe I should have spent 5 minutes more checking what was on the stand here before I did it. A little splash of vinegar is all it needs. Luckily you're not going to see any results of this one. And so when you've done that, then when you actually start whipping it, you'll find that it is far more voluminous. It will come together so much more quickly. Okay? We get that lovely glossy. That's what look at that. Look how glossy that already is. The water, the vinegar, the sugar, they're all reacting together. And then once we start to get this lovely volume going on, then you can add a little bit more sugar. And again, I think ordinarily, if you're going to kind of measure it, you're looking at about a tablespoon of sugar per egg white. So that means that you're going to get them sweet, but they're not going to be too sweet. Okay, so whisk, 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 and just keep it going. Really kind of whisk it up until they're really firm. You've got really lovely firm peaks on them. That's what you're looking to do, okay? So once that's done, then you're just going to put them onto a bit of parchment and cook them. Now, the other thing that I do with my meringues, and I don't know if anybody else does this, but it kind of works for me, is I'll set the oven quite high to start with. I'll set it about 180 degrees. And as you all know, as foodies, you're looking at about 125 degrees to cook your meringues. It's gas mark a quarter, more or less. But instead, look, I'm still bleeding. But instead, if you set the oven high, then the minute you're ready to put them in, drop it right the way down. So what happens is, as they go in, there's heat in the oven. So that means that the egg starts to crisp up on the outside, okay, the minute that you put it in. But as you turn it down, then you're slowing that cooking process down. And that's how you end up with beautiful meringues like these, which are crispy on the outside and equally are chewy on the inside, which is what you want to do. Now, final thing for me, again in relation to meringues, is if you want to cut a meringue, it's always a bit tricky, isn't it? It's always that thing that, you know, it crumbles more so than anything else. You've got a lemon meringue pie, you want to cut a nice piece, it will crumble. Something you can try with your meringue is when you're going to cut it, is to oil the knife that you cut it with, okay? And again, what happens is it just reacts a little bit with the egg, and it stops it sticking. So it will stop it crunching through. Okay, you're still going to get a bit of crumble. It's a meringue, for goodness sake. But it just means that on a good day, when you cut it down the middle, you don't get that same drag. So you get a straight line like that on your meringue rather than it crumbling. Okay.